Before I speak of this tale, I must warn thee of the terrors which hath been writ of. Horrors of the flesh, be it mutation or gore, and soul horror follow, as does the depravity of apathy and the deprivations of the wilds on the human body. Hail and well met to the reader of this tale. This tale is titled The Whale on the Mountain, and was transcribed by Venture's League scribe Jason Marce of Pamplona, he, him. To all who read this record, be mindful of the horrors of the flesh and mutagenic, visceral, and soul forms, as well as the depravity of apathy and the deprivations of the wilds upon the human body. Hearken these words and remember them for all those that were, are, and shall be. On the 2nd of Chaos Iari in 5023 AR, Nusa Paga Arama, she they, of the Lorong people in the northernmost mountains of Occidentalis, spoke to a Venture's League scribe after being encouraged by a party who came upon them. Paga found themselves running from the sky, which cascaded a multitude of colors. Chaos cackled and danced about the sky like a storm and a sloshed bowl of water. She held a blanket over her head to hide from the visions of madness and arcana that manifested, then exploded, melted, reformed, and multiplied all at once like dye in the clearest of glacial runoff. They could not hear their own screams or the sound of the burning rocks underfoot being jostled over the cacophonous cries of the world's agonized screams and laughter. All at once they heard what she thought was fire roaring and earth quaking, snow squalling, water sloshing, lightning cracking, thunder growling, and wood breaking. The sound made their ears bleed as the intangible whispers of the sky serpent cast spell forms everywhere. Humanoid statues, warped with reptilian features, rose from the mountains like trees, only to crumble away into lava that floated upwards and dissipated into cloud stuffs. Her house had been destroyed by an errant landslide. All but she were crushed, or did not cover their eyes to the madness above, that they then mutated into forms so heinous, reality could not stand it, and so eradicated their flesh, leaving only their souls where the immortals in all cycles could not reach them until the month of chaos had ended. Serpentine hisses followed her, and the whipping of violent winds lash at her flesh and clothes, leaving bloody tatters, for she was a rifted of the immortals. Her red skin and bronze eyes were signs of her divine parentage from the spirits of her clan. Arcana desired her agonizing obliteration. It was with all the luck their immortal kin could give that Paga found a crevice and slid. She covered herself in the blanket to hide and moved earth over herself. They bit their tongues so hard to stifle cries, blood trickled onto the gravel that so irritated her open wounds and rubbed roughly against their skin. If they did not procure food and water, they would die regardless if wound rot took them. As the 2nd of 19 days continued on with the sun and moon moving erratically across all of space, she knew this was the time death would come. All they could do now was curl up and die as peacefully as possible. Maddening sights filled their dreams. Visions of fate unraveling and being rewoven by the gods and older powers, of ancient elders and immortals, and of all manner of psychedelic flashes of color that dragged them through the realms burned in her eyes. Sometime following, the rifted sire-human began praying. It was then that she fell through yet another hole in the earth. A sliver of light shone through, illuminating the cavernous pit they were in. A tomb for a person about to die, they thought. She returned to her tormented slumber to wait for death to come and take her. The sight of their grandfather burning to a crystal, then to ash, as his bones scalded away his flesh, giving way to teeth. Sharp teeth and a single burning gold eye emerging from the light and the darkness, with a human's hissing as one side of its draconic face came into view while the other gave way to void. Paga woke with a scream so violent, blood spurted from their mouth and coated the rock wall before them. As they beheld the drip of their blood down the curved wall of the hole, the faint light that trailed down to the cramped space caught a raised portion. It was coarse, but much smoother than the rock around it. Over time, the smooth surface took more concrete shape. It was joined by several more like it coiling up and around Paga. It stretched for many feet around. In the curve of this dead beast they found themselves. The thing was large beyond measure of any beast the Lorung witnessed. Fear filled their heart at the thought this could be an ancient elder skeleton. For some time they worried about the possibility, and shuddered knowing one incantation or whisper from the twilight outside may awaken this sweeping ruin. Time passed slowly. Time passed quickly. Time may have passed by. Time lost all meaning and sense as a word both upon the tongue and in the mind. Gently, they reached out and traced every bone with their hand. 18 ribs on one side, totaling 36 ribs. 12 vertebrae, maybe more. A long tail that ended in some finger-like thing. Its head was long, and the slope of its teeth were pointed. Whatever this thing was, it ate flesh. Fatigue began to take hold quickly and deeply soon after. Air was present, but choked with dust, and slowly crawled through the same passages Paga fell in. To pass the time and stave off the dreams of chaos, they counted livestock in their head over and over again until she rested. Fire! Fire of every chroma! Once again she rolled her head and scrambled against the other wall, brushing against the rib, causing her to punch the hard stone instinctually. In the darkness, her breath was the only sound. Arcana could still be heard far up on the surface. Again, she went back to mapping out the bones. The beast was long and vaguely serpentine. A long hand attached to no arm was close to the bulging front of its body, where the swell of the rib cage was largest. There must have been lungs and heart. A fish, maybe. She once saw their mother wrestle a large river fish off their younger brother. With her bare hands, she slammed the beast ashore and gutted it with a knife. That was her first lesson in fish butchery. But a fish so high in the mountains? Such a thing had never been heard nor seen. It was old. In her mind she conjured the image of many fish above her. The river where her family had traveled to in the warm months ran above her. There they saw the reflection, in the days of old, the rounded face of their mother, looking over Paga and her 6 siblings. She looked into her own eyes and smiled. The young buck-toothed person smiled back and waved before a large fish was caught on a spear and pulled. A rapid wave, and the group was gone. Then came the massive fish with 2 long hands coming from its chest. Its snout was fanged fiercely and snapped at any prey as it listed down and around her before enveloping them in a soft crescent and dying. The river retreated far away to the sky, leaving just rock and her. A dull weight in their stomach pressed heavily upon them. Hunger started. The lack of pain throughout and consistency of it said a day had passed, maybe 2. The chill air preserved some of their moisture, but it would not stave off thirst for more than 2 or 3 days, if she did not sweat or sob. Every ounce of soul in her told her to cry and begin mourning the loss of their family. They had settled there to be guides for travelers. The gracious money and goods sustained them at home and with others. On a clear day with safe paths, walking took more than half a day to reach a nearby village. Chaos Yari was upon them now, until the 17 or so days had passed. Again, she thought of the landslide and beast corpse. Death would come for her, and their sequestered skeletons would be together forever, unable to tell their tales. A headless sky titan cast a lightning bolt at the earth, opening up 3 long wounds with birthed the growing volcano whose acidic spray turned into lush, spiked greenery. Its warping body melded with the new earth, and the two became one roiling mass of flailing about in a macabre dance before Paga awoke again. Silence. The red-skinned rifted placed their ear to the crack they fell in. No sound. Excitement overtook them, and then began scrambling up the rocks. Their reach grabbed onto rough stones and dragged their weight with every measure of strength able to be mustered. Their shortened fingernails buckled and cracked under the pressure of their fingers, holding on to dear life, leaving bloody stumps where fingertips had never once been scraped down to the raw flesh and tendon. Every stone grasp grew more desperate and less coordinated from exhaustion and pain. The endeavor was excruciatingly long and frustrating. They felt each ardent stone sanding away calluses with chalky efficiency. Blood trickled down the stone walls, soaking the bottom of Paga's red velvet shoes. She felt her foot give way. The scramble to maintain friction on the rock turned her heart into a storm's rage before she felt her dying weight slip and begin its quick descent down the grooves and sharp edges of the passage. 10 long blood trails lined the walls before stopping. Paga gritted their teeth, then whimpered and screamed in pain. The last of their fingertips' flesh abraded, leaving only some tendon and bones to clutch onto outcroppings. All the blood from their body drained down to her feet. Paga wished for death to be swift. If they fell down the pit again, maybe they would crack their skull open and perish there, she thought. But the urge to survive was as hardy as a yak. Paga swung their arm up and grasped the next stone not covered in smeared sangre. Time continued to be a blur to her, as every move was a fight for survival they had never anticipated. "I will not die," they said over and over until the words manifested in their head by a faint echo of the hole. The large hole where she first fell through was in reach. Like a rope, she flung her arm around until it latched onto the gravelly surface of the mountain. A patch of soft earth and grass greeted the remainder of their scalding fingertips. With all their might, they dragged herself up the wall. The rough stones tore at the pangden around their waist. At last, cool mountain air brushed over her body. Paga had found the sky clear and turning to dusk. It was then that they knew all 19 days had passed, and chaos did as it may and began to collapse as the weight of time's erratic dance caught up to the agony. A triumphant cry echoed through the mountains as the darkness welcomed her into slumber. Once more the odd fish greeted her and cooed deeply. It clicked and let out a deep bellow before swimming into the void of her mind where the sea was not water but ether. When she awoke, they were strapped to a yak's back. It was warm out. The mortal equinox started anew, and Chaos's gaze had passed from this world for another year. When they cried and looked up, Paga beheld 7 armor-bedecked persons covered in sigils and pendants with great and terrible weapons in their hands. They were truly horrifying to behold. One stepped forward and extended a gauntleted hand. touching Paga's shoulder reassuringly. Though they wore a silver mask forged to look like a demonic face, the eyes behind them comforted her. She reached up to clasp every gnarled finger around the hand, only to find them wrapped in cloth. 5 bloody circles and dull pain showed up where these persons had to cut each hand's uppermost digits. A long-rung warrior walked them both. The bright-faced, bearded guide picked a root from between their fanged teeth. "I am Yessa of the Firmament, guide to these ventures and protector of the 4th Scroll Temple. My pronouns are he, him. I am sorry for the loss of your kindred. We found your house and your kin. They were given proper honors and mourning." His voice was somber yet gruff, a side effect of chanting during the harshest snowstorm. "Fate has seen you survive, though it saw you no longer needing your fingertips. What is your name?" I am Paga Nusa of Murdu, they meekly spat. "We are 4 days' trek through the mountains to the village of Mangsar. There you shall rest and be taken care of. We come from Mangsar, but not 6 days ago. Is that okay?" Yessa asked as he held warm water to Paga's lips. She nodded in affirmation. With that nod, the Venturers walked back to the front of the column. Without stopping for 4 days, the band moved. Paga saw along the trek graven images of persons melded into ice walls that dripped to reveal forests of metal within. Their eyes twitched and looked frantically about as if they were frozen corpses with life trapped inside. The stones and thatch of their houses rolled up and stayed floating in the air. The charred husks of beasts driven from their lairs by desperate hunger marked their path. No carrion beasts circled above, for their singed cadavers had the stench of arcana upon them. With every new horror, a shriveled old acephalous human marked it on a paper map. A wood carving and scrimshawed a piece of stone before handing it to a priest to bless and toss. After 4 days of unending sights of the twilight's ravages, Paga entered the gates of Mangsar and was tended to. Prior to the party's departure, the venerable Ventures League scribe, Vindamarish Kuthran Agarakali, he, him, wrote Paga's account and drew a sketch of the skeletal beast until approved by its witness. Transcription ends. Of all the records in the Archivus Venturis that come from the Barrens of Occidentalis, this account is most peculiar. By fate's design, Vindamarish Kuthran Agarkali recognized the ossified beast, for it was one that was dreaded in the warm waters of the world. The word that he had attributed to the beast, translated loosely as the long whale that bites small, a beast known to Ventures League zoologists as to the mangroved whales that inhabit all warm waters. The presence of one skeleton in such pristine form in the mountains requires further inquiry, in theory from the Scola de Bestia and possibly the Scola de Terra. No venturing parties shall be mounted to investigate. Regions north of Mangsar deemed Terra Terminus Arcana by the Me Shu Brothers Party. And to all who were, are, and shall be that read this account, glory to you. Tales of Mortality is a world-building podcast set in the world of Asenscia, created and owned by Bard over 18 years and counting. It is a fantasy world of horror and madness, a planet racked by mutation and magic, where humanity survives only through itself and the spirit indomitable against horrors natural and unnatural. The Worldbuilder, writer, producer, and artist of the thumbnail is Bard. Me! Below is a transcription of lore, as well as a link to my Instagram, Bard of the Mad Realm, where I share art related to Asenscia. Thank you all for listening to Tales of Mortality. May chaos reign. Bye-bye.